All right, we are back here talking NBA Finals on the Just End the Suffering podcast. And it's not the series most people thought we had, but it's all some fun. Join me today, one of our favorite guys over at SportsGrid and a big NBA guy, Kevin Walsh is here. Kevin, how are you?
Good, Mike. Good. Excited to be back here, man. Excited to talk a little bit about these NBA Finals.
Yeah, and for the audience, we are recording on 4th of July, so even though we not get to see the hot dog eating contest because ESPN had much technical glitches, we can still talk about the NBA.
Yeah, I saw that a little bit on Twitter. I wasn't watching myself, but apparently everything went haywire, but Joey broke a record in the over. So you take it for what it is.
Yeah, I feel like with Joey Chestnut, you always bet the over.
Yeah, it feels safe. I feel like that's been a safe bet for like a decade now.
Yeah, it's only about a decade, but speaking of bets, like, what kind of odds do you think you could have had beginning of the playoffs? Like, you're getting a Milwaukee Bucks Phoenix Suns NBA final.
You could have got a pretty good one. You definitely could have. I know the FanDuel Sportsbook does offer an NBA Finals exact result market, where you probably, you could pick the Suns over the Bucks or the Bucks over the Suns. I actually think they even allow you to parlay the conference winner. So you could have got quite the payout. Even if, both teams are going to be continuing to creep up the board, you still could have got quite the payout, even at the start of the playoffs for this to be Bucks Suns.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you could have gotten that line, especially after Kevin Durant hits that ridiculous force in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference semis, you still make a pretty good penny. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I know we'll kind of get into the path of how we got here, and this whole NBA season, man, it's just been defined by injuries at every stop and turn. But what we've seen is these two teams aren't an exception to that. They've certainly both had their fair share as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this whole playoff situation just feels like we thought the bubble might be the weird playoff spot where we weren't sure if it counted, but like this one, when every team seems to have a big star get hurt or bad performances, I feel like this is more of the anomaly playoff season the bubble was.
It's quite honestly, Mike, it's not close, and don't let anybody tell you or anybody listening otherwise. It's not close. The idea that the bubble where everybody and basically had fully healthy teams, right, would be the place with the asterisk, as opposed to a record-setting amount of all-stars being injured and missing games during a postseason, is absolutely ridiculous. And if you look at it, like, again, give these teams their credit. We'll be breaking down the NBA Finals. We'll be watching it. We'll be betting on it. But does anybody actually think that fully healthy, these are the two best teams in their respective conference? I know nobody thinks the Bucks are better than that. So that isn't even something that I have to sell people on. And as it pertains to Phoenix, they were down 2-1 to the Lakers, and then Anthony Davis was injured. And they really did not make quick work of a Clippers team that was missing top 3 player Kawhi Leonard. And we're talking about top 3 player in the world. Again, it is what it is, but the thought that the bubble was going to provide us these oddities of, oh my goodness, how is this the matchup when it's been this year and it's been pretty clear to see for a while.
Yeah, I think this year is just, we're kind of doomed for that because all the games in the compressed schedule, some of those teams, the COVID postponements, having all the makeups, so the wear and tears felt obvious, and the Clippers are probably the biggest victim of it, in my opinion, besides obviously Anthony Davis situation. But Kawhi Leonard getting hurt in the second round of the playoffs there. Paul George has said, and Paul George balled out in that series against the Suns, that if Kawhi's healthy, they're winning that series. I think I agree with him.
Oh, they absolutely are winning that series. The only difference is, again, if we had fully health, they wouldn't have been playing Phoenix. They'd have been playing the other LA team. They would have finally been able to get that matchup, which is what we had been waiting for. Again, those two teams to start the year we thought were the two best, and I really have no evidence, and I know Phoenix is the one representing the West, that suggests that the two LA teams weren't the best squads. LeBron James was out there like inventing dance moves on Jay Crowder because that's how comfortable that they were moving past that Phoenix team. They were 100% moving past that Suns team. And I mean, the Clippers went out there without Kawhi and embarrassed the one-seeded Utah Jazz. And I know Utah, again, everybody had levels of injured, right? Like, Chris Paul's probably not operating at 100%. Donovan Mitchell wasn't operating at 100%. But we're talking about guys missing games. Kawhi out a series. Anthony Davis playing, 5 minutes? And clearly being able to tell, like, oh, that man can't play basketball, and being immediately removed. And then even right on the east of it all, no Kyrie, missed Harden for X amount of time. I mean, we even just saw Giannis go down, right, and miss one of the games. And I know we're going to have to talk about that, which makes me worry. I guess Phoenix has the most injury luck because they had to put the kibosh on Giannis. It's all we've been talking about since the season has started, Mike. It's just all been injuries.
It really has. I mean, Phoenix's thing, Chris Paul has the hands, and he's in health and safety protocol, so I think they got a little lucky there. But, like, the one thing you notice with Phoenix is obviously, like, they've been incredible since the bubble last year when they showed up in Orlando. They went 8-0 down there, and they carried over getting Chris Paul into this season. So what's the big thing you notice about Phoenix so far watching them go through these playoffs?
You know, something you just said there, Mike, though, is important. And, again, Chris Paul has been phenomenal for this team. But an underrated part is the fact that Phoenix showed massive growth in that bubble. Also, that season, again, think about it, right? They were close to actually being able to crack into one of the playoff spots. They missed DeAndre Ayton for 25 games due to a PED suspension that season. We all can tell how valuable DeAndre Ayton is, right? So if that didn't happen, like, the Suns probably make the playoffs last year. You pair that with just natural growth of Ayton's game, Booker's game, and including a healthy Chris Paul, it's easy to see then how kind of Phoenix starts to put these pieces together. And the one thing that you can say about this Phoenix team that no matter what in the postseason is always valuable is having two guys that in the crunch time of games 100% are ready to step up and take that moment and take that shot, whether it be Chris Paul or Devin Booker. Like, if you look at the odds to win the Finals MVP, those two have flip-flopped back and forth between the favorite to win it from the Phoenix Suns during different points of this postseason. You know, Devin pulling ahead with his Lakers series, Chris Paul pulling ahead with his Nuggets series, because they do really have two guys that are ready to embrace the big game and that closer role when needed.
Yeah, and I think obviously the sentimental favorite is going to be Chris Paul because, I mean, the dude's been one of the best players in the league for a long time. He's had a lot of bad luck in the playoffs in terms of, like, going down with injuries, having his teams collapse. So he was due for some good luck, and I think it'll be fascinating to see how he plays on the biggest stage.
Yeah, and if you think about it, right, Chris Paul came back against the Clippers and didn't look great, perhaps just some natural rust, right? The health and safety protocols, they said that he was asymptomatic, so not that he was really battling off illness, but just kind of being away for even a week, right? With the playoffs and the intensity that comes with that. But by the close, I mean, he played maybe the greatest half of his career, a legitimate career high, regular season or postseason, 31 points in that second half in the closeout game against the Clippers, finished with 41 total. He was masterful in that game. And that's the thing about Chris Paul. And for the series overall finals experience, Jay Crowder is the only player with finals experience. And by the way, it came last year. His 6 games is the only finals experience that anybody on either team is bringing to the table. So it's all kind of square. So Chris Paul's never been to the finals. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. He's played in the big moments throughout his career. I wouldn't worry about that at all.
It really feels odd to think about Jay Crowder everybody going up to his locker saying, "Hey, what's it like playing in the finals?" Like, you're the one here who's actually done it.
And the best, and the one thing is right about the bubble, though, I'd be like, "Hey, what's it like going on the road in the finals?" Oh, I have no idea. None. I don't. We'll find out. We'll find out together, everybody.
Yeah, we absolutely will. And I think the thing with Milwaukee is fascinating. Obviously, the first round we saw them dominate the Heat, who were never the same after the bubble last year, but the last 2 series, each had some fortunate injury luck on their behalf, where this whole series, Brooklyn changed and Kyrie steps on Giannis' foot, and he's out for the rest of the series. And then Trae Young getting hurt game 4. I think Atlanta was up 2-1, and, like, that changed the complexion of that whole series. So, like, what's your big observation about Milwaukee thus far?
Yeah, and again, right, Milwaukee is really no different from Phoenix. And I'll say this: I had the Bucks beating the Nets in that series, and some people are like, "Hey, man, you called it." I'm like, "No, I didn't. I was wrong. They would have been lucky to get a game." It felt like watching that series play out. Like, the Nets were better than them, and at some point when you're going to project out next season, the Nets will rightfully be the favorites to win the NBA championship. But Milwaukee has taken advantage of the situation. Now, obviously, with Giannis going down, that, was like, hey, listen, we're kind of dealing with our own issues. But as you just pointed out, well, you had Trae Young miss multiple games, and then, of course, be nowhere near 100% for the closeout. His production basically being matched by Jeff Teague, to put it into perspective. But the one thing that you'll notice with Milwaukee that it's different than I feel like all their postseason run, and this they can thank the Nets for, is the fact that Budenholzer has finally stopped going with regular season rotations for the playoffs. You need to play your stars 40-plus minutes. This is winning time. There is no time here for overusing Bryn Forbes or Thanasis, as much as I love them. Giannis, Middleton, and Drew all need to be playing 40-plus. He got forced into that during the Brooklyn series because Durant and Harden never went to the bench. But he's stuck with it. And he's stuck with it against Atlanta. And I think he'll stick with it against Phoenix. And that's important to stay on level footing because Devin Booker goes out there and plays 44 minutes and you run, Drew Holiday out there for 36. You're at a disadvantage. So that's a big boost for them is that Budenholzer basically got forced into playoff minutes.
Oh yeah, absolutely, it absolutely is. I mean, thinking about what's going on there with the Bucks, I think the big thing you take away if you're a Buck fan from that conference finals matchup is just the fact that hey, we had a great series here from the complimentary guys. Like Chris Middleton stepped up big, Pat Conte was knocking down big shots, Drew Holiday had some big moments. So I think it was big for the guys to say, hey, we can find ways to score without Giannis on the floor.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true, Mike. And I think for specifically Middleton and Holiday, they were both tremendous, right, in the closeout game against Atlanta. And look, health and all that, we know. But that's still on the road, right? You know that Giannis apparently could have maybe been back for the Game 7. All right, maybe we'll close this thing out in Milwaukee. But Drew Holiday came out, set the tempo very early in that game, and then at a half, Chris Middleton came out on fire. And for the most part, closed the door. And I know that there were different moments in the fourth quarter where that thing got close, but they always provided themselves that separation. And Middleton has had some excellent games. He still doesn't have the consistency that you want from a main star, but having Drew Holiday there, who has been even more of an upgrade than I thought over Bledsoe. And I'll be honest, I knew Holiday was better than Bledsoe, but I didn't know how big of an upgrade he would be over Bledsoe, just because I didn't know if they would be able to put him in a position where his offensive game would flourish the way that it has in Milwaukee, but it absolutely has. I mean, he's a legitimate, not only third scorer, but he's a legitimate creator for others on that team. And it's worked out well, and clearing those hurdles on the way to the finals is, of course, very big.
Yeah, absolutely is. And I'm thinking back to the Bucks, like the biggest moment for them that's gone underreported here is like the Bruce Brown thing in Game 3 of the semifinals there, because if somebody makes the shot there and the Kyrie injury happens, they're still down 3-1. Having that be 2-2 is a huge swing because the Durant game is not the killer that it would have been otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is like those breaks, right? Those come throughout the postseason. It's the same thing with Phoenix, right? Realistically, if Paul George makes one of two free throws, we go to overtime. If he makes both, the game is over. And then if they could have just grabbed the rebound off of Mikal Bridges-Smith's three, that's 1-1 going back to Los Angeles. And we would have been going into a Game 6 where the Clippers were looking for a closeout. I mean, look, the way that we could have had, health or not, Paul George versus like Durant, right, with no other tertiary superstars, could have all played out with a couple of bounces here and there. But what you have to do if you're in Milwaukee or Phoenix, when you escape by the skin of your teeth, you have to appreciate that and then try and pounce on your opponent the next game, right? Because they're always a little bit demoralized when they know that they should have sealed the deal and they let that opportunity slip.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously we're heading into this finals here. Game 1's on Tuesday night. And the big thing that's hanging over the series now is the availability of Giannis Antetokounmpo, who obviously has the ACL injury and Achilles injury. I'm not sure which one it is, but he's questionable. They said he could have played Game 7. I don't know if it's something we never had to find out, but his availability hanging over the series, I think, is a big X factor if you're trying to figure out how to bet it and for how you can project the series to go.
Oh, 100%. It is the most important thing, I would argue, Mike. And I'll tell you this, the show that I do on SportsGrid in the morning, The Early Line, really kind of helped me for this season in a way that I didn't realize it would. But because the show airs from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., and I'm not even doing this as a plug, but do tune in if you people would like. But the reason I bring that up is we are looking at lines as early as possible, right? without usually full information as to who is going to be in and who is going to be out. So one of the skills that I've been able to really kind of pick up on is what a line says the book thinks will happen. Okay, that line suggests that Giannis will play. That line suggests that they're 50-50. That line suggests that Giannis is out. And I'll tell you what, Mike, that game one line that's available right now, that 5.5 Phoenix Suns spread, to me is a full Giannis out line, and I disagree with it. Why would Giannis be 100% unavailable if there was an idea that he would be playing in a Game 7 that was supposed to be on Monday? Why would he then not play on a Tuesday? So if you're an early bettor, grabbing Milwaukee plus 5.5, I think that number can only go south, because if they rule him out, I don't think Milwaukee's laying 7, 8, 8.5 points. I don't think that's the direction this line goes. So early projection, I tend to think Giannis plays based on reports, but I'll tell you this, Mike, I don't believe the books really are expecting Giannis for some reason in game one.
Yeah, for sure. That's something I've been tracking too, and the series price reflects it too. I think that was last I saw, like Phoenix was minus 140, but Milwaukee's plus 175. So the Suns are pretty heavy favorites. I think that Giannis at least going to be diminished when he does play in the series.
But I think you'll see, right, in the odds to win the first game money line relative to the series price, you see there is an expectation that Giannis will come back in some capacity of this series. And that was something that, in the moment of that injury, the hyperextension of the knee, we didn't think was going to be the case. I mean, it looked like he was done, right? You know, different Twitter doctors you might follow thought that he was done. So the fact that they're going to be able to get Giannis back at any point, really, is a massive boost for them.
Yeah, it's true. Also, it's one of the things that makes it a risky series to bet, in my opinion, also, because you don't know what kind of shape he's going to be you came back in, because all the reports for the Nets in Game 5, like, oh, James Harden's going to be back. That's great. He was basically playing on one leg, and he was useless in that series. So that's a tough pill to swallow and try and make that bet.
It's a good point. It's a good point, obviously. I'll say this, though, Mike, you think about certain bets where you could possibly have some value. Giannis is plus 350 to win Finals MVP, right? If you compare that to the Bucks plus 140, price to win the title, there's a significant gap there. That when these lines were out, when Giannis was fully healthy, that gap didn't exist. If the Bucks were, let's just say the Bucks were plus 140, Giannis would be plus 150 to win Finals MVP. They would be offered at the same exact price, because the book's saying, listen, if you're going to win the title, it's going to be because of Giannis. Because of the injury, they can't put that in the same way. But I don't think a 70% Giannis that plays second or third fiddle to Middleton or Holiday, I don't think that team wins the finals. So I actually think the Giannis plus 350 Finals MVP bet does have a little bit of juice to it.
Yeah. Any other bets that you were interested in making in this series?
I'm looking to start this series off with a position on the over. The one thing about, a series is if you have the ability to jump in early, perhaps you can ride the wave and carry things out for a little bit here. You look at the game one total, it's 217. These teams met multiple times this year, both games getting nearly 250 points in them. The first one was 125 to 124. The second, a little bit higher than that, benefited from overtime, but still got 230 regulation points. You saw the Bucks start to pick the offense up a little bit towards the back end of that series against the Hawks. I think they can continue to move quick and shoot threes. You saw Phoenix put up 130 in their closeout game. Again, that's a team that can run. So for me, I think that 217 reflects what they have done at certain points of this postseason, certainly, but I think what I've seen from them recently, and when I saw them match up in the regular season, I think I might be getting some legitimate value on that 217 that I can ride for the first couple of games for this series. So I'll probably start out on the over and work from there.
Yeah, it's a good call. And obviously, it's a fun series. So if you had to make a pick right now, like who wins in how many games?
Yeah, I'm going to make a pick right now, Mike, on a healthy Giannis. And I have to understand, not a 100% Giannis, but a near 100% Giannis. And I'll make a prediction of Bucks in 6. I just think that Giannis is such a difference maker in that way where he can go out there and they can have answers to Ayton that maybe teams that they've not played at certain points of the postseason have had. They have perimeter wing defenders like Drew Holiday for Chris Paul and PJ Tucker for Devin Booker to match up nicely. And Giannis is going to be difficult for them again if he can play. He put up 47 points in Phoenix this season. The second time they played, he scored 33. As long as they actually can get, 25, give or take, from Middleton there, I think Giannis can carry a lot of that workload. Obviously, health provided, Mike, but I feel like I have to kind of work off the idea of a healthy Giannis, considering they said he was going to get a green light for Game 7.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think it'll be interesting. I also think you're going to have some fun in the offseason. I bet there could be some interesting bets going on there in terms of like markets or like trade options for Damian Lillard. I feel like that's going to also be one that's going to be a very fun betting market to track because I feel like there's going to be a lot of teams there in their port and actually take offers.
I hope that's a thing that we are able to wager on. I love stuff like that. I know that, when we were doing it with the NFL, I remember for a lot of quarterbacks, they would have, Cam Newton or Tom Brady, right back when that was the deal. So if they post Damian Lillard next team, Ben Simmons next team, Kawhi Leonard, Chris Paul, there's actually a lot of big names that could quietly become relevant pieces of this conversation, which would be fun, but also the NBA draft too. That always comes right before free agency, and that'll help shape a lot of things. And there could be some big trades being made there. The Warriors having 2 picks within the lottery, perhaps try to take some swings and see what they can execute. We've heard the Pistons might be willing to move on the number 1 overall pick, which always opens the door to chaos. So the NBA offseason, as always, will be a blast.
I will say this. I also wrote about this on the blog version this week for the podcast here. If Damian Lillard's available, I think the Knicks, you need to do whatever you can to go get him because you don't get those guys moving very often. You can get one big star here. You can bring others down the line. So I think that's something they have to do if it's available to them.
If possible, I'll just say this for Knicks fans. The Knicks will try, but the Knicks do not have the best possible offer. So if the Knicks strike out, it won't be because they didn't try. They will give that a go, but it is not going to be a situation. Remember for years, Mike, how every single time a star player became available, we knew Boston had the best trade package because they owned those Brooklyn picks. That's not what we're dealing with the Knicks, right? The Pelicans, the Thunder. There's a lot of teams out there that will have comparable, if not better, things to offer. The Knicks will be aggressive. And Chris Paul's a name that they're going to be in talks about. And you made an important point about what bringing a Damian Lillard or even a Chris Paul can do. From a winning perspective, obviously that is important. But the perception around this Knicks organization took a tremendous turn this year. Winning basketball, an environment that you want to be a part of, that matters. In a league where you want to try and bring stars to your situation, showing that off is super important. And I'll add this little anecdote for you, Mike. A little bit of just kind of projection. Don't trade RJ Barrett. Not because he's better than Damian Lillard. You Knicks fans that think that you shouldn't trade RJ Barrett because he's better than Damian or too valuable, you're crazy. Don't trade RJ. He is the key to Zion coming in like 5 years. It's 5 years. Play the long game. Keep RJ. He'll be the ultimate recruiter.
Yeah, that's a good point also. I think the Knicks, as far as me going, like, this year was fun, but, like, Atlanta exposed a lot of things in the playoffs. Like, I think obviously they know they have to make some upgrades because they can't roll the same team back that they have the same kind of success they did in a regular season because I think this year was sort of play conducive to their circumstances.
Oh, I'll tell you this right now. If the Knicks run it back, I would probably project them to miss the playoffs. The East is going to be better. You think about, again, the Knicks finished 4th, right? Does anybody think the Knicks were the 4th best team in the Eastern Conference? Considering they were handled by Atlanta, no. Boston will be better. Miami will be better. Indiana brings in Rick Carlisle. Washington, Toronto, Chicago, year 2 of their All-Stars. The East has depth to it. I know usually the conversation is, it's the Eastern Conference. The East has depth to it. The Knicks will need to make market improvements if they want to be back in the postseason next year.
It's very important, in my opinion, to get in the postseason again because you want to. I think the next free agent class is supposed to be better. You want to sell these guys, say, hey, we're making strides here. You don't want to have this be like the 1 year, and then all of a sudden you're winning 32 games, you're out of it, and then you have to tell the stars to come here and try and be the saviors again. You don't want that.
No, 100%. But I will say, Mike, they've made a lot of steps in the right direction with this season alone, right? Because let's be honest here, Julius Randle is a legitimate guy. Like, Julius is not just a piece. I mean, he was an all-NBA talent. I think and that's another thing, right? If you're a star, you're like, hey, I think this coach put me in a good position in Bibbs because of how he allowed Julius to flourish. They need more. You're better off with Julius as a 2 than a 1. But you're again, they made so many strides this year. I can't give them enough credit. I can't give them enough credit for what they did.
Absolutely. It'll be fun to see what happens this offseason. Kevin, thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, how can people follow social media, keep up with your coverage on SportsGrid, including the early line?
Absolutely, yeah. Follow me over on Twitter at the Kevin Walsh. Gonna always tweet out when we go live. Not just the early line on SportsGrid 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern, but also In Play Sports Tonight, which is on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM channel 204 from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Both of those shows Monday through Friday. So make sure you hook up with us over there.
Yeah, I got to say, betting the baseball this year has definitely been challenging because you never know what's going on in any of these games.
It's a blast, though, man. It's a blast. And that's the one thing about the night show In Play Sports Tonight is we're doing it live, right? So you always have the ability to react to the chaos and get in the mix that way.
Yeah, I remember specifically the night the Braves scored 20 runs. You put on Twitter, Braves total over 4.5. You had that one in about 5 minutes.
But I said, Mike, then I don't know if you saw my follow-up tweet. If I bet a team over 4.5 runs and they score 20, I need a bonus, right? Like a double payout, ownership within the team. I don't know. I'm spitballing, but they got to give me some type of juice here. Listen, it doesn't work that well every night, but that's the beautiful thing about a team total to the over. Oh, what's that third inning? Cash, cool. I don't have to worry about a Phillies bullpen imploding. I'm not betting on the Phillies to win the game. I'm just betting on them to score X amount of runs. It's a lot calmer to go about it sometimes that way.
Absolutely, Kevin. Thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it.
You got it, Mike. Anytime, man.